The Gathering Storm. The Council of Eternal Conflict. The massive space station Nexus Prime hung in the void like a steel mountain, its surface covered in docking bays that held the most fearsome warships in the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen walked through corridors filled with beings that could tear her apart with their bare claws, yet she felt no fear. The 32-year-old human diplomat had spent years preparing for this moment, knowing that today's meeting would determine whether the galaxy would finally know peace or descend into the greatest war ever witnessed. Around her, representatives from 15 different civilizations moved with barely contained aggression. The Scarith dragged their armored tails across the metal floors, their red eyes glowing with battle hunger. The crystalline Vexful chimed musical notes that somehow sounded threatening. The massive Gorin lumbered past, their stone-like bodies making the floor shake with each step. Sarah was the only human in sight, and every alien she passed looked at her with the same expression, curiosity mixed with contempt. She reached the Grand Assembly Hall, a circular chamber with a domed ceiling that displayed the stars beyond. 15 seats arranged in a perfect circle, each designed for a different species. The human chair looked almost comically simple compared to the others, just a basic metal seat with no special features. Sarah took her place and waited as the other delegates filed in, their conversations filling the air with a dozen different languages. The boasts of warriors. High Commander Vrak of the Scarith was the first to speak. His voice was like grinding metal as he addressed the assembly. The time for talking is past. The Scarith Empire has developed the Void Render, a weapon that can tear holes in space itself. Our enemies will be scattered to the cosmic winds. He activated a holographic display, showing a massive weapon that looked like a twisted spear made of dark energy. Queen Zephyra of the Crystalline Consortium laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Primitive technology. Vrak. Our harmony bombs can turn entire star systems into singing crystals. Your soldiers will become part of our eternal music. Her display showed planets being transformed into geometric crystal structures. The debates continued for hours. Each species presented their ultimate weapons, their perfect strategies, their unbreakable alliances. The Goran showed planet-crushing hammers that could shatter worlds. The Ethereal Collective demonstrated mind control devices that could turn enemy fleets against each other. The Hive Swarms displayed biological weapons that could adapt to any defense. Sarah listened to it all, taking careful notes on her tablet. Every few minutes, one of the aliens would make a comment about humans being the youngest species or barely spaceworthy. She endured the insults with patient silence, knowing that underestimation was humanity's greatest advantage. The human proposal. When the presentations ended, Elder Thoxin of the Temporal Syndicate called for final statements. We have heard from 14 civilizations today. Each promises victory through superior force. Does anyone have a different perspective to offer? The chamber fell silent. Sarah stood up slowly, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon her. I do, Elder Thoxin. What if we simply chose not to fight? The reaction was immediate. Vrak's laughter sounded like a rockslide. Queen Zephyra's crystalline body flashed with amused colors. Even the normally stoic Goran delegates made rumbling sounds that might have been chuckling. The human suggests surrender, Vrak said between laughs. Perhaps your species is even weaker than we thought. Sarah remained calm. Not surrender, Commander. Something different entirely. What if conflict itself is the problem, not the solution? General Mordak of the Iron Legion stood up. The devices were called mirror nodes, and they looked like nothing more than standard communication relays. They had been disguised as routine maintenance equipment and installed on every major space station, every military base, every populated world. The aliens had even helped install them, thinking they were upgrading their own networks. Dr. Marcus Webb, the lead scientist on Project Mirror, had spent 20 years developing the technology. Unlike weapons that destroyed, the mirror nodes would create something that had never existed before, a galaxy-wide network of forced empathy. When activated, every thinking being within range would experience the emotions and memories of those around them. Sarah's earpiece crackled with a barely audible message from Earth, Phoenix base to Diplomat 1. Mirror network at 98% coverage. Activation ready on your signal. She touched her earpiece once to acknowledge, then returned her attention to the debate raging around her. The point of no return. The meeting had devolved into threats and posturing. Alliance proposals were being shouted down, territorial claims were being disputed, and several delegates had their hands on their weapons. Sarah realized that diplomacy had reached its limits. Elder Thoxin raised his crystalline staff for silence. The Council has heard all proposals. The vote is now before us. All in favor of the final convergence war, signify your agreement. 14 hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages rose into the air. Only Sarah's remained down. The motion passes, Elder Thoxin announced. The final convergence war will begin in 72 hours. All civilizations will converge on the neutral zone for the greatest battle in galactic history. May the strongest species survive to rule the stars. As the delegates began to file out, making plans for their final preparations, Sarah activated her hidden transmitter. Phoenix base, this is Diplomat 1. Initiate Project Mirror. Full activation in 71 hours, 59 minutes. The galaxy is about to change forever. The calm before the storm. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Across the galaxy, the greatest military buildup in history was taking place. 15 civilizations were moving their entire fleets toward the neutral zone, an empty region of space that would soon become the site of ultimate warfare. Sarah remained on Nexus Prime, officially to observe the proceedings, but actually to monitor the Mirror Network's final preparations. She watched through the station's viewports as alien warships of every size and design began to gather. Some were as small as human destroyers, others were mobile space stations bristling with weapons. The Scarith brought their void renders, massive ships that looked like flying cathedral spires. The crystalline consortium's vessels were beautiful geometric forms that sparkled with deadly energy. The Goran fleet consisted of ships that looked like flying mountains, rough and imposing. Each species was convinced that their strategy would lead to victory. The ethereal collective planned to use their psychic powers to confuse enemy fleets. The hive swarms intended to overwhelm opponents with sheer numbers. The temporal syndicate would use time manipulation to attack from multiple timelines simultaneously. What none of them realized was that humanity had spent the last 70 years studying them, learning their psychology, their fears, their deepest desires. The Mirror Network wasn't just a technical achievement. It was the result of the most comprehensive psychological study ever undertaken. Sarah received her final briefing from Earth as the fleets moved into position. All mirror nodes are active and synchronized, Dr. Webb reported. The network covers 99.7% of all military vessels and personnel. When we activate the empathy field, every being in the combat zone will experience the emotions of everyone around them. What about the 0.3% not covered? Sarah asked. Mostly automated systems and a few isolated command ships. They won't be enough to continue the battle once the network activates. Sarah looked out at the gathering armada. In 12 hours, the final convergence war would begin. In 13 hours, if Project Mirror worked as planned, it would end forever. The final countdown. As the countdown to battle reached its final hours, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. If the Mirror Network failed, 15 civilizations would tear each other apart in a war that could last for centuries. If it succeeded, humanity would be remembered as either the galaxy's saviors or its greatest manipulators. She activated her personal log for what might be the last time. Personal log, Captain Sarah Chen, Terran Diplomatic Corps. In a few hours, we'll discover whether humanity's greatest strength, our ability to understand and empathize with others, can save the galaxy from destroying itself. We're about to find out if compassion is truly more powerful than conquest. Outside the viewport, the alien fleets continued to gather, their weapons charging, their crews preparing for battle. None of them knew that their fate now rested in the hands of the species they had dismissed as weak and naive. The final convergence war was about to begin. But if humanity's plan worked, it would also be the last war the galaxy would ever know. The mirror's reflection. The greatest armada. The neutral zone had been transformed into the largest gathering of military might in galactic history. Over 10,000 warships from 15 civilizations formed a deadly constellation in the darkness of space. Each fleet maintained its position in a vast sphere, weapons powered and ready, crews at battle stations. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck of Nexus Prime as the final preparations were made. The space around the station buzzed with activity as smaller vessels carried last-minute supplies and personnel to the waiting fleets. Communication channels crackled with battle orders in a dozen different languages. High Commander Vrak's voice boomed across the general frequency. Scarith warriors, today we claim our rightful place as masters of the galaxy. Our void renders will tear reality itself apart. Show no mercy to those who stand against us. Queen Zephyra's crystalline tones followed. Consortium forces, sing the song of victory. Our harmony bombs will transform this battlefield into a monument to our eternal glory. Sarah touched her earpiece, opening a secure channel to Earth. Phoenix Base. This is Diplomat 1. All fleets are in position. Mirror network status. Dr. Webb's voice came through clearly despite the vast distance. All systems green, Sarah. Every major vessel is covered by our network. We're tracking over 15 million individual minds in the combat zone. Psychological profiles. Exactly as predicted. Every species is experiencing pre-battle adrenaline rushes, fear responses, and territorial aggression. Their emotional states are perfectly primed for the mirror effect. Sarah took a deep breath. Dr. Webb, in 60 seconds, either we save the galaxy or we become the most hated species in it. Sarah, remember what we learned from our studies. At their core, every intelligent species shares the same basic emotions: fear, love, hope, and the desire to protect their families. The mirror network will just remind them of that. The first shot. The battle began exactly as scheduled. General Mordak of the Iron Legions fired the first shot, a massive plasma cannon that lit up the darkness. The energy beam struck a hive swarm vessel, causing it to explode in a brilliant flash of light. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of weapons opened fire simultaneously. The space around Nexus Prime became a light show of destruction as energy beams, projectile weapons, and exotic physics-defying armaments filled the void. Sarah watched through the station's enhanced viewports as the most advanced military technologies in the galaxy were unleashed. The Scarith void renders began tearing holes in spacetime itself. The crystalline consortium's harmony bombs started converting matter into singing crystal structures. The Goran planet breakers charged forward like flying mountains. Activation in 30 seconds, Dr. Webb announced through Sarah's earpiece. The battle was intensifying rapidly. The ethereal collective was using psychic attacks to confuse enemy fleets, causing some ships to fire on their own allies. The temporal syndicate was creating time loops that made some vessels appear in multiple places at once. The hive swarms were releasing clouds of biomechanical fighters that swarmed around larger ships like angry insects. 10 seconds, Dr. Webb said. Sarah, are you ready to change galactic history? Sarah closed her eyes. Do it. The mirror awakens. Across the galaxy, 15 million mirror nodes activated simultaneously. The effect was invisible to the naked eye, but it spread through the combat zone at the speed of light. Every thinking being within range suddenly found their consciousness connected to every other mind around them. The change was immediate and overwhelming. Commander Vrak, in the middle of ordering another void render attack, suddenly felt a crushing wave of fear wash over him. But it wasn't his fear. It was the terror of the crystalline consortium pilots whose ship he was about to destroy. He experienced their panic, their desperate thoughts of the families they might never see again, their regret at leaving home. Queen Zephyra, preparing to launch a harmony bomb, felt the anguish of the Goran soldiers on the ship she was targeting. Their crude emotions, their simple love for their stone children, their hope that they would return home to their mountain cities, filled her crystalline consciousness with unfamiliar warmth. General Mordak, his mechanical body enhanced with emotion-suppressing circuits, found himself overwhelmed by the collective fear and love of thousands of organic beings. His targeting systems locked onto a hive swarm vessel, but he couldn't bring himself to fire as he experienced the ship's crew's devotion to their queen and their desperate desire to protect their breeding grounds. The moment of truth. The mirror network didn't just share emotions, it shared memories. Suddenly, every being in the combat zone could see through their enemies' eyes, experience their histories, understand their motivations. A Scarith warrior preparing to board an enemy vessel suddenly experienced the memory of an ethereal collective member caring for their injured child. The warrior's claws, raised to strike, slowly lowered as he felt the parent's love and concern. A hive swarm fighter pilot, diving toward a Goran ship, experienced the memory of a Goran elder teaching younglings about the ancient songs of their people. The pilot pulled up from the attack, unable to destroy beings who shared such beautiful traditions. An ethereal psychic, about to launch a mind-crushing attack, experienced the simple joy of a crystalline consortium member celebrating their first successful harmonic resonance. The psychic's mental assault dissolved into curiosity about how the crystals created their music. The silence falls. Within minutes, the greatest battle in galactic history began to wind down. Weapons powered down, attack formations broke apart, and communication channels that had been filled with battle cries fell silent. Sarah watched in amazement as ship after ship ceased firing. The void renders stopped tearing holes in space. The harmony bombs powered down. The planet breakers came to a halt. Phoenix Base, she whispered into her communicator. It's working. The shooting has stopped. Dr. Webb's voice was filled with wonder. Sarah, we're monitoring unprecedented neural activity across the entire combat zone. Every mind is connected. They're all experiencing each other's emotions and memories simultaneously. High Commander Vrak's voice came over the general communication channel, but it was different now. Gone was the aggressive snarl, replaced by something that sounded almost like wonder. Attention all fleets. The Scarith Empire is powering down weapons. We need to understand what is happening. Queen Zephyra's crystalline tones followed, harmonizing in ways that spoke of confusion and curiosity rather than aggression. Consortium vessels are standing down. We are experiencing, we are feeling something unprecedented. The Great Understanding. As the mirror network continued to operate, something remarkable happened. The 15 civilizations didn't just stop fighting. They began to understand each other in ways that had never been possible before. The Scarith, who had always believed that only strength mattered, experienced the ethereal collective's memories of healing and compassion. They felt what it was like to use mental powers to comfort rather than attack. The crystalline consortium, who had thought all other species were chaotic and primitive, experienced the Goran's deep connection to their stone cities and their patient, geological view of time. The Goran, who had considered themselves the most stable and reliable species, experienced the hive swarm's incredible coordination and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the good of their community. Each species began to see their supposed enemies not as threats to be destroyed, but as beings with their own fears, hopes, and dreams. Elder Thoxin of the Temporal Syndicate was the first to break the silence. Fellow beings, I am experiencing something that my people have never encountered before. We can manipulate time, but we have never truly understood the present moment. Through your memories, I feel the weight of existence, the precious nature of each second of life. General Mordak's mechanical voice carried new warmth. Iron Legion's report that we are beginning to understand what we have been fighting for. We sought strength, But through your minds, we experience the strength that comes from protection rather than conquest. The new alliance. Over the following hours, as the mirror network continued to operate, something unprecedented in galactic history began to take shape. The 15 civilizations started working together. The Scarith offered their advanced metallurgy to help the Goran build better cities. The crystalline consortium began teaching the ethereal collective how to create healing harmonies. The hive swarms shared their biological expertise, with species struggling with genetic diseases. Sarah watched it all unfold with tears in her eyes. Dr. Webb, they're not just stopping the war. They're creating something entirely new. The mirror network is designed to shut down after 24 hours, Dr. Webb replied. But Sarah, I don't think it will matter. What they're experiencing now will change them permanently. High Commander Vrak's ship approached Nexus Prime, sending a communication request. Sarah accepted it, finding herself face to face with the massive reptilian warrior. Human, Vrak said, his voice now filled with respect rather than contempt. Through the mirror, I have experienced your memories, your species' history. I understand now what you were trying to tell us in the Council. Your people learned to cooperate because you understood that strength comes from unity, not domination. Queen Zephyra's crystalline form appeared on another screen. Captain Chen, we owe you an apology. We thought humans were weak because you spoke of peace, but we now understand that it takes far more strength to choose compassion than to choose conquest. The legacy. As the mirror network's 24-hour cycle came to an end, the effects began to fade, but the changes it had wrought were permanent. The 15 civilizations had experienced true understanding of each other, and that understanding could never be erased. A new galactic council was formed, not based on military might or territorial claims, but on cooperation and mutual aid. The neutral zone, which had been intended as a battlefield, became the site of the galaxy's first truly peaceful space station. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the new station, looking out at ships from all 15 civilizations working together to build something beautiful. The former warships had been converted into construction vessels, medical ships, and scientific research platforms. Dr. Webb's voice came through her communicator one last time. Sarah, the mirror network has been completely shut down, but the psychological profiles we're receiving from across the galaxy show that the changes are permanent. Every species that experienced the mirror effect has shown dramatic increases in empathy and cooperation. What about humanity? Sarah asked. How will they see us now? That's the beautiful thing, Dr. Webb replied. They don't see you as the species that manipulated them. They see you as the species that showed them how to be better than they were. Elder Thoxin approached Sarah, his ancient crystalline form moving with new grace. Captain Chen, the Temporal Syndicate has voted unanimously to offer humanity a place on the new Galactic Council, not as the youngest species, but as the wisest. Sarah smiled. Thank you, Elder, but I think we're all still learning. The difference is that now, we're learning together. The end of war. Years later, historians would mark the day of the final Convergence War as the end of the Age of Conflict and the beginning of the Age of Cooperation. The mirror network had shown the galaxy that understanding was more powerful than any weapon, that empathy was stronger than any shield. The 15 civilizations, once locked in eternal warfare, became the closest of allies. They shared technology, knowledge, and resources freely. They explored the galaxy together, not as conquerors, but as explorers seeking to understand the universe and their place in it. And at the center of it all was humanity, the species that had been dismissed as weak and naive, but had possessed the one quality that could save the galaxy: the ability to see the universe through someone else's eyes. Sarah Chen, now Admiral of the Galactic Cooperation Fleet, would often stand on the observation deck of Unity Station and remember the day when humanity's greatest strength had ended warfare forever. She would smile, knowing that future generations would grow up in a galaxy where understanding had triumphed over aggression, where cooperation had defeated conquest. The day humans ended deadly warfare would indeed never be forgotten. It would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to understand, the courage to empathize, and the determination to build something better together. No generation would ever forget the day humans completely ended dangerous warfare, because it was the day the galaxy learned to see itself as one people among the stars.